Hello everyone, I'm Akriti Dave from New LG Institute of Engineering and Technology. We will be discussing about the next unit of Indian Constitution, and that is about emergency provisions. So there are a lot of kind of situations in the country where these emergencies are there. So country needs to act and react in different ways when these kind of situations are there. Sometimes it can be like a war, a threat to the country, terrorism, or it can be some internal factors also. Sometimes financial situation is not well, so this kind of things actually contribute to the emergency provisions. So how this works, let us see them in the detail. Basically, this is unit 14 of the GTU, that is emergency provisions, in which three kinds of emergency provisions are mentioned. First one is the national emergency, second one is the president's rule, which is also known as the state emergency, as well as the financial emergency. So basically, what is emergency provisions? They are contained in this part, you can see, of the constitution. Basically, 22 parts are there. From that part, 18 deals with this one. Out of 22 chapters, part 18 is dealing with this. Article 352 to 360 are dealing with all the emergency provisions. So you can see here, Constitution actually stipulates three types of emergencies. First one is the national emergency, which can be either internal or external. Second one is emergency in the state. State emergency is also known as president's rule. And third one is the financial emergency. So let us see about that. First of all is Article 352 dealing with the national emergency. So national emergency, what is that? It can be declared on the basis of the war, external aggression, or armed rebellion. This kind of factors which actually threatens the nation's security, that deals with national emergency. The Constitution employs the expression proclamation of emergency to denote this kind of situation. So, which are the grounds for declaring the national emergency when it can be declared in the country? Under Article 352, the President can declare this when the security of India or a part of it is basically threatened by the war or external aggression or armed rebellion. So that doesn't need to be whole country is under the threat. Sometimes if some of the part of the country is under the threat, then also the national emergency can be declared. President can declare a national emergency even before the actual occurrence of the war can be there. If there is a threat, still, if it has not been created, but it can be created later on if the situation is leading to those kind of things. At that time also, this can be done. So here it is stated that President can declare a national emergency even before the actual occurrence of war or the armed rebellion or external aggression. Means before reaching to the situation itself also this can be created. When a national emergency is declared on the grounds of war or external aggression, it is known as external emergency. On the other hand, when it is armed rebellion from the inside country, it is known as internal emergency. So that is how external and internal emergencies are classified. Next thing about this is, what are the parliamentary approval and the durations for this emergency provisions? Basically, the proclamation of the emergency means the stating or declaring the emergency must be approved by both the House of Parliament within 1 month from the date of its issue. If it is issued today, then after 1 month, that is the deadline for giving the approval of that. And both the Houses of Parliament, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, must agree upon that. Second is, however, if the proclamation of emergency is issued at a time when the Lok Sabha has been dissolved, or we can say the dissolution takes place during the period of 1 month without approving the proclamation, then the proclamation survives until 13 days from the first sitting of Lok Sabha after reconstitution. Because it is possible that in this situation, if Lok Sabha is dissolved, now it is discontinued. Okay, normal tenure is 5 years, but if no confidence motion has been passed and Lok Sabha has been dissolved, so they are not having 1 month time. So at that time, till the new Lok Sabha reconstitutes and the first session of that is there, another 30 days for the survival of proclamation is given. Provided the Rajya Sabha has in the meantime approved it. Means if the Rajya Sabha is approved and the new Lok Sabha is under the consideration or under the constitution, at that time, first of all, it can be approved by the Rajya Sabha. After that, 30 days will be given to the first session of new Lok Sabha. Okay, that is how this proclamation of emergency can be done. If approved by both the houses, emergency continues for 6 months. Also, it can be extended to an indefinite period within the approval of this parliamentary for every 6 months. If after 6 months also they are saying that, okay, there are more requirement of the emergencies, definitely it can continue. Normal time stipulation is 6 months for that. Every resolution approving the proclamation of emergency or its continuance must be passed by either of the houses. Means if someone is saying that it must be continued after 6 months, then for the continuance of this emergency, definitely both the houses must agree by the special majority. Okay, we have seen that concept in the majority and amendment process. Okay, two-third members present and voting out of the total membership, more than 50% of total majority of the membership. If they are agreeing, then it's known as a special majority. Okay, so that is how this every resolution requires it. Now, how to revoke the proclamation if once the emergency has been declared? So, which are the considerations to revoke it? So, proclamation of the emergency may be revoked by the president at any time by a subsequent proclamation, and it doesn't require parliamentary approval. For declaration, yes, it requires, but if it wants to get removed, if the president wants to revoke the proclamation, for that no parliamentary approval is required. Emergency must be revoked if the Lok Sabha passes a resolution by a simple majority disapproving its continuation. Okay, so in these grounds also, this revocation of proclamation of emergencies can be done. Next is, what are the effects of the national emergency? Basically, the impacts are so much high for this. Effects on the center-state relations are there. So here the union government under the Article 250 can make laws. New laws can be there for whole or new part. We can say whole or some part of the country. Okay, so that is how the effects of the center-state relations can be mentioned. Under the Article 250, now union government can make laws for the whole country or some part of the country. Second is effect on the life of the Lok Sabha as well as the State Assembly. So their terms can be extended by a period of 1 year. Sometimes their sessions are having some of the periods, okay? Like in 1 year, at least 2 sessions must be there, or in 1.5 years, at least 3 sessions must be there. So that impacts on the Lok Sabha and State Assemblies also. If the situation of national emergencies are there, their terms are extended by some of the period, okay? Effect on fundamental rights, because definitely some of the fundamental rights can be suspended, but right to life will never be suspended. Okay, so right to freedom under Article 19 is automatically suspended except the Article 2021, which is right to life and personal liberty. They can never be suspended. Okay, so that is how the effect on fundamental rights it can be there. Financial, executive and legislative power of the every state in India is to be exercised according to the situation. So if things are not well, definitely every pillar needs to work in the collaboration for improving the situation. That is how the effects of national emergency is. Second one is about the state emergency, or we can say the president's rule. So Article 355 is dealing with that. So it imposes a duty on the center to ensure that the government of every state is carried on in accordance with the provision of the constitution. If it is not done, if president feels that the state is not working as per the Indian constitution, definitely this is declared as a state emergency or the president's rule. It is this duty in the performance of which the center takes over the government of a state. Okay, if president is feeling that this state is not working, well, definitely center can take over. Under the Article 356, in case of failure of constitutional machinery. So it is known as president's rule. Now, which are the grounds for this imposition? Okay, the president's ruler can be proclaimed under these two grounds. First one is Article 356, which empowers the president to issue this state emergency where he or she feels that a situation has arisen in which the government of a state cannot be carried on in the accordance with the provisions of the constitution. Article 356 says that president may give this proclamation for the state emergency if he or she feels that okay, now the constitutional machinery is failed in the state. After that, he will proclaim this. Okay, so he will take over the control and he will try to run the state in his own way. Second is Article 365, okay, where it states that whenever a state fails to comply with or to give the effect to any direction from the center, then it will be lawful for the president to hold the situation where another things cannot be carried out, okay, and he will just try to carry the things with accordance to the constitution. Means both the articles are saying the same thing. So they are saying that first point where he is not satisfied with the situation. Second point, some of the directions have been given to the state, but the state is not following it properly according to the union's direction. So at that time also president is having the power to declare this state emergency. That is known as president's rule. Okay. Here they have said it will be lawful for the president to hold that the situation has arisen in which the government of the state can't be carried on in accordance with the provision of the constitution. So both of them are seeing 356 and 365, a basic constitutional machinery failure in the state where president needs to take over or we can say center needs to take over. Second is parliamentary approval and the duration. So proclamation of imposing the president's rule for the state emergency, it must be approved by both the houses of parliament within 2 months. Initially for the national emergency, we are given 30 days, okay, but for this state emergency, 2 months are given. So what are the consequences of this? President acquires the following extraordinary powers when the president's rule is imposed. First one is he can take up the functions of the state government and the powers which are vested in the governor or any other executive authority. Now president can deal with everything. Second is he can declare that the powers of the state legislatures are to be exercised by the parliament. So now parliament exercises the power of that particular state legislature. Third one is he can take all other necessary steps, including the suspension of the constitutional provisions relating to any body or authority in the state. So these three things are there which can be the consequences of the president's rule. So basically he or she is taking over the situation, control of the state, governance of the state, and that is how it works. So what is basically the difference between national emergency and the president's rule, or simply national emergency and the state emergency? So first one is that it can be proclaimed only when the security of India or part of it is threatened by this situation, war, external aggression or armed rebellion. But when we talk about the state emergency, it is when the constitutional failure of the state is there. It can be proclaimed when the government of a state can't be carried out in accordance with the provision of the constitution, which reasons cannot be always connected with the war, aggression or armed rebellion. Regardless of those reasons, if only the constitutional machinery is the failure of the country, at that time also the president's rule can be imposed. Okay. Second one is during its operation, the state executive and legislature continue to function. Okay, and the powers assigned to them are under the constitution only. So here they have no relations with the national emergency. They are working as it is. But when we talk about this president's rule, definitely state legislature, then state executive authorities, everything will be under the consideration of president. Okay, so that is how during its operation, state executive is dismissed, as well as the governor's work can also be taken over by this state, or we can say the center state. Okay, here not only the state will be working, because all the things from the state will be taken over by the president. Okay, so that is how during its operation, state executive is dismissed and state legislature is either suspended, because now governor's work can also be carried out by the president. So president is administering the state through the governor, as well as the parliament can make the law. Okay, so that is how the law can be formed here, and that's the basic difference between national emergency and president's rule. Here the national emergency is saying that state executives are working according to the constitution, but here everything can be taken over by the center. Okay. Third one is, in the national emergency, parliament can make laws on the subjects enumerated in the state list only by itself. Okay, but it can't delegate the same to any other body or authority. And here in the president's rule, the parliament can delegate the power to make laws for the state to the president or to any other authority specified by him. Okay, that is the main difference between these two. There is no maximum period prescribed for its operation. It can be continued indefinitely. And here there is a maximum period prescribed, that is 3 years. More than 3 years, the president's rule cannot be there. Okay. The machinery for the constitution, the mechanism must be restored by 3 years maximum. Under this relationship of the state, center with all the states undergoes a modification definitely at the time of national emergency. Here only the state gets changed. Okay. So the relationship of only the state under emergency with the center is under the change. Here all the states are under the change. Okay. So that is how these two things are considered in national emergency and president's rule. As well as when national emergency is there, definitely fundamental rights get affected. Here it has no effect on fundamental rights in president's rule. Every resolution of the parliament approving its proclamation must be in the continuance if it is passed by a special majority. Okay. And every resolution of parliament approving its proclamation or continuance can be passed only by a simple majority. So here things will be passed by the special majority for the national emergency. Here only simple majority is required. Second and last is this Lok Sabha can pass a resolution for its revocation, and here there is no such provision. It can be revoked by the president only on his own decisions. Okay, so that is how difference between national emergency and president's rule is there. Last one is about the financial emergency. If the President of India is satisfied that a situation has arisen due to which the financial stability, or we can say the credit of India, or any part of its territory is threatened, definitely the financial emergency can be declared. So here it can be declared on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. If they are suggesting, definitely financial emergency will be declared. A proclamation of emergency must be approved by both the houses here within 2 months. So we can see here the financial and state emergency needs to be considered in 2 months. Once it is approved by both the houses of parliament, financial emergency actually continues indefinitely. So here also there are no stipulated time period for that. And two things are implemented here. One is repeated parliamentary approval is not required for its continuation. Okay, it can be extended, and there is no maximum time limit prescribed for this. Okay, so those are the two provisions for the financial emergency. So what are the effects of the financial emergency? So we can see here during the financial emergency, the executive authority of the center expands and it can give financial orders to any state. So that is how the center state relation gets modified. Okay, they can order the state for the financial things. All the money bills or other financial bills that can come up for the president's consideration after being passed by the state can also be reserved, because sometimes the review, analysis, and suggestion process may take longer time. So that is how money bills can be under the consideration of president and they can be reserved for some time. Next is the salaries and allowances of all or any class of the persons serving in the state can be reduced if the financial emergency is there. Telangana government has actually decided to cut the salary of its employees ranging from 10% to 75%. Okay, so there will be a 50% cut in the salary of those peoples and the pensioners that Telangana government has decided. So same way state can take the measure according to the situation of the financial emergency. President may also issue some of the directions for reduction of salaries and allowances of all or any class of the person serving in the union, as well as judges of the Supreme Court, High Court. Okay, these things can be impacted. So what are the important questions? We have seen three kinds of emergencies: national, state, and financial. So it can be asked like explain emergency provisions, then effects of emergency provisions on fundamental rights, as well as effects of national, financial, and state emergency, and difference between national emergency and president's rule. Okay, this can be the questions from this unit. Okay, and that is how the emergency provisions are discussed. So thank you so much and see you in the next session for the upcoming topics of Indian Constitution. Thank you so much.